Greetings, Ranger fans. Jake here for a deeper look at episode 11 of Power Rangers Dino Fury, McScary Manor. But first, a rapid run-through. Let's kick off the counter. It's morphin' time! So we open on McScary Manor, more like McScary Manor, where Pop-Pop, remember him, is working on a radiator and tries to reassure himself that Area 62 was much scarier. Wait, what? But before he can reference any more 60s Streisand musicals, he's scared off by a ghostly whale. Bye, Dolly. At Buzz Blast, Amelia bemoans to Javi how ghost stories never just walk into the office. So Pop-Pop walks into the office. He tells him about the ghost and tries to warn Amelia away, even though ghost hunting is her primary character trait. That and proving Ollie wrong. Pop-Pop then goes to help Jane fix her AC, but leaves his keys behind, so Amelia decides to do some light-breaking entering with her spook snare. I am afraid no sporks, Beast. Turns out Tombtress was trolling the grounds and binds up Amelia like a bandaged burrito before she can snag her with her spook snare. But not her legs, bye! So Amelia runs out and dodges Tombtress until the others can arrive to set her free when the monster shows off her other power. Mood Blast! Turning Javi into an emotional wreck. Alas, poor Goldie the goldfish. So they morph and the others fight Tombtress until she zaps Amelia into being a meanie pants and teleports away with mucus. Ollie, this is all your fault. So they return to Buzz Blast to recover with some hot chocolate. Like a warm blanket. But Pop-Pop shows up looking for his keys. Amelia confesses to losing them, he scolds her, she loses her temper for being treated like a kid, he heads back to the mansion to look for them, Javi reveals he found them, and now Amelia needs to return them without revealing she's a ranger to keep Pop-Pop safe from Tombtress, who has now received orders from Void Knight to give up on her search and go after the Rangers. Also a shower. At the mansion, Pop-Pop finds a dino key in the basement when Amelia shows up as Pink Ranger to return his keys. Even though her knowing his name is Mr. Jones is way more suspicious than just returning them as herself. And he confesses that Amelia's parents had mysteriously disappeared when she was a baby and he promised to take care of her, and somehow she never knew about this promise and had focused on the paranormal to figure out what happened, but then she gets called away to help fight Tombtress's Mood Blast. Now Izzy's scared, Ollie's happy, and Zato's bored, so Amelia uses the new Blazing Dino key to summon the Blazing Battle Armor, fighting off Tombtress, who suddenly grows, so Amelia borrows Zato's key to summon the T-Rex Champion Zord and Dimetro Blazing Zord, and combine them into the T-Rex Blazing Megazord to take out Tombtress with the T-Rex Blazing Strike so that Amelia can return to Buzz Blast and apologize to Pop-Pop as he works out the kinks and changes AC system that somehow generates windstorms, sweat boxes, and blizzards. Roll credits. And that's the end of the episode. Now, let's take a deeper look. As what is arguably our second mid-season finale, depending upon how you want to count this trio of Netflix-exclusive premieres, there's definitely a lot to unpack here, with a number of elements decidedly being handled better than others. First, and most notably, is the major backstory reveals made during this episode for Amelia and Pop-Pop, with quite possibly the most notable one being dropped the most casually. Pop-Pop used to work at Area 62. Wow, Pop-Pop used to work at Area 62, that makes so much sense. As was established in his introductory episode, one of Pop-Pop's key character traits is his belief in superstition, which appears now to have been driven by heavy exposure to paranormal and supernatural phenomena while working at Area 62. We also gain considerably more insight into his relationship with Amelia, as we learn that Amelia's parents disappeared when she was extremely young, and that she was actually raised by Pop-Pop, explaining the large influence he's had in her life and why he apparently had to spend so much time cleaning her bedroom when she was younger. So yeah, Superstition Strikes retroactively looks a lot less like filler. I mean, the overall plot was still filler, and Pop-Pop was channeling way too much Jimmy Durante in that episode. But it does appear that he is still a far deeper character than I initially gave him credit for. Not only in terms of his paternal relationship with Amelia, but also being far more connected to the actual main plot than I could have imagined, even when still comparing him to other parental figures like Warden Garcia and Dr. Akana, who we haven't seen in a while. We now have a ton of questions about exactly what happened to Amelia's parents, what Pop-Pop was working on at Area 62, and whether those two plot points are connected or are linked to separate arcs, and what any of this has to do with Void Knight's backstory or his mysterious love interest. It just goes to show that even characters introduced innocuously can still potentially impact the plot in big, unexpected ways. Still keeping my fingers crossed that this will end up being the same case with J-Borg, who was interestingly absent during this episode. Much like in Pop-Pop's last appearance. Is Pop-Pop secretly J-Borg? Obviously, I don't actually believe that that will really be the next big reveal, but I will note there was one backstory reveal in particular that didn't really land for me, and that was unfortunately the one that was given the most weight for the characters. Pop-Pop's promise to Amelia's parents. Not only is it one that feels like it would have been a given, considering that he presumably ended up with custody over her after her parents' disappearance, but it's also such a generalized promise that is so clearly conveyed by his actions that it really doesn't make much sense that it would even be considered a secret. Like, he promised to take care of her, raised her throughout her childhood, and now she's an adult with a job, so What ontological difference does it make if this was a promise versus just acting out of a sense of obligation? And yes, I do understand the intent is to explain Pop Pop's overprotectiveness to Amelia, but the baseline expectation for anyone placed in the role of a parent is to take care of their child. So how does this promise to take care of a child change the relationship to that child? It really comes down to the wording, because there is clearly an unusual circumstance behind this promise, but the lack of specificity causes it to fall flat. Maybe they specifically wanted her to be kept away from dangerous activities, or protected from the paranormal, or didn't want their fate to befall her. Any one of those wishes would have served to better clarify Pop Pop's motivations and added specificity to their relationship, both for Amelia and for the viewer. Strong story concept, but the execution through the dialogue is unfortunately lacking here. It is still a touching scene, though, as interactions between Morphed Rangers and their family members often are. And speaking of Morphed Rangers, we did get a pretty cool showcase of Amelia's new powers, with the show once again leading the way in female representation by not only giving her a set of armor that her Sentai counterpart never got a chance to wield, but also making this the first time outside of Power Rangers Hyperforce that a female ranger got to lead the way in terms of armored power-ups. Beyond the blazing battle armor, this episode also takes great advantage of having original Ranger footage for the Megazord cockpit sequence as well, having a bunch of fun with the Rangers expressing comedic body language while under the effects of the Mood Blast. However, and I realize I do have a number of caveats on this episode, while the Mood Blast does generate some cute comedic moments, successfully removes Javi from the first fight with Tombtress, and takes Izzy, Ollie, and Zato out of the action for Amelia's big debut of the blazing battle armor, it doesn't quite mesh with the rest of the episode thematically. The Mood Blast doesn't fit with Tombtress's Egyptian mummy motif, nor with her mission of locating the blazing Dino Key, and it doesn't really impact the civilian plot with Pop Pop outside of maybe driving the conflict of her being upset over his overprotectiveness. Because honestly, I don't know if they're even still under the effects of the spell or not during that scene. I mean, Javi is weirdly happy over the hot chocolate and marshmallows, but he refers to being full of feelings as having been in the past tense, so I really don't know if this was just another manifestation of his marshmallow addiction from episode 9. Now, I do understand there is a need to accommodate the Sentai footage, specifically the absence of the Black Ranger from the first fight, the aggressiveness of the Pink Ranger after getting hit with the monster's beam, as well as the reaction of the Green Ranger. However, in the source material, that beam wasn't a mood blast, but a truth blast, instigating fights by forcing characters to confront each other with their most uncharitable feelings about one another. Which is honestly a much better fit for the story that they wanted to tell. Though I will note that that episode of Ryusoulger had a whole host of other problematic issues that I just won't get into right now. But the concept of unveiling harsh truths not only fits naturally with the Sentai footage, but also with Amelia's conflict with Pop Pop, and with Tombtress's other vaguely defined ability of being able to sense valuable objects. Which actually brings me to another point. After a string of strong villainous strategies this season, the baddies are honestly pretty unfocused this episode, abandoning Tombtress's search first to take a shower, which I know was a gag, but still, and then to attack the city to draw out the Rangers, which feels uncharacteristically short-sighted for Void Knight, especially once the Rangers have been tipped off to something being important about McScary Manor. Also, side note, why was Tombtress wailing like a ghost? Like, I know that it's supposed to be playing up the haunted house tropes, but in-universe, she has no reason to be doing that, and it acts as the inciting incident for the entire plot. There's also other logic issues with Tombtress choosing not to go back to McScary Manor, as it diffuses the dramatic tension over Pop Pop's safety immediately after the Rangers express concern over him running into the Sporix Beast again. Beyond that, we also have confusing motivations behind the manor scene between Amelia and Pop Pop, as it's meant to provide her with cover to return the keys without him realizing that her and Javi are Rangers. But why would that be more suspicious than the Pink Ranger calling him by name? Seriously, she calls him Mr. Jones when he has, to our knowledge, never met the Power Rangers before, and he has zero questions about that. Are we really supposed to believe that he would have pieced their identities together simply by his granddaughter mentioning that her co-worker found the keys she dropped somewhere near where the Rangers were fighting? Now, I will note this episode does have a lot of good ideas and fun moments, ranging from the creepy haunted house setup to Pop Pop's surprising depth of character to the wacky Ranger moments of Javi with his mug full of marshmallows, or Zato being unimpressed by Tombtress growing, and even the final scene with the out-of-control air conditioner system, while being technologically baffling, was at least a good-natured ending. However, the confused themes with the monster's abilities, as well as the unfocused motivations for certain scenes, leaves the episode feeling somewhat disjointed, and therefore kind of cluttered as a result, preventing this introduction of the Pink Ranger's past struggles, present power-ups, and potential future character arcs from truly hitting its mark. Also, I recognize the name McScary Manor is likely a play on the real-life McScary Manor, a haunted house out in Tennessee. Do not Google it. You will be disturbed. So make sure to join me next time, whenever that might be, for a deeper look at episode 12 of Power Rangers Dino Fury. And if you would like to share this week's rapid run-through, you can find it as a standalone clip over at Morphin Legacy's YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe to us both, ring the bell for future notifications, and until next time, farewell Ranger fans, and let the power protect you.